When I was very young, my brother's 5 years older than me. He had a group of friends who used to listen to metal, so looking up to my brother, it was kind of a natural progression to listen to the same music as my brother would be listening to.
What bands?
At the time, I remember had a tape that had Autopsy and Dismember, side A and side B. So I used to take it with me to school, and on one particular occasion I remember a teacher asked me what I was listening to. I was still in like year 6, and they confiscated the tape because it was too
Graphic.
brutal for what I was listening to. And it actually made me want to listen to more music of that genre.
And then someone gave me a tape, basically, and that's it.
Hooked for life.
Exactly.
I got into metal. A cousin of mine as well just made a mixtape for me. On the side it was Black Sabbath, the first album. On the other side it was Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind. And it just blew me away. And then, you know, you start to meet people at school and everything. And the album after was Far Beyond Driven. And then everything changed.
Must have been around 11 or 12. I still remember, for example, having a Kiss sticker on my pencil box at De La Salle in Form 1. And then obviously as time went by, I started getting more and more into the music. I would say that by 1981, the genre had really crystallized in as a musical preference for me, and buying albums, T-shirts, going to local concerts as well.
Funnily enough, what got me into playing metal and all the heavier stuff, it was Guitar Hero. I love that game to bits, which actually motivated me to play guitar more.
This was one of the top books I bought, so I started playing the guitar. I went for like 6 months to a teacher who was called Tony Patch. And for me at that age, I was around 12 at the time. And at that age it was a bit boring, just doing theory and technique. which those 6 months were enough kind of for me to be able then to play this. And then years of practicing, I bought like another 2 tab books of Metallica. And from there, like 2 years passed and I started listening to other stuff. At the time it was like Sepultura and, you know, the 90s and 2000s era then.
Okay, no, I always used to sing, I mean, either in a group, we used to sing in church, kind of. But, and then I had taken part in voices as well, voices from the heart. And that's where I kind of developed my soprano voice in voices. And at the time, Carlo was experimenting with, he had just started listening as well to Nightwish, came kind of we started listening to him, and we kind of liked the sound that soprano had with metal, like, you know, and we tried something else. He thought I had the potential, and basically it's been since then.
She used to go out with my friend, my guitarist of Little Embassy, basically.
And in fact, I had a session.
And she had a session with us while she was going out with him. She was a female voice in Little Embassy, basically.
It was only for a short period of time. We never went live.
At that time, Little Embassy then disbanded after some time, and then we started going out with each other.
And I also remember watching a lot of TMC too. Back then it was an Italian TV station, and they had a midnight program called Sgrang.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was the first time I ever watched Slayer, the Deftones, Korn, and so many bands on that show. And that was how I got into it.
The bands that really left an impression on me were black metal bands like Marduk and Dark Funeral and Gorgoroth, you know, the famous ones. I don't know, there was always something like mystic about black metal that stood out from all the other genres. I tried to go to a Martyrium concert, actually. It was 2010, but I was too young to get going. So I think the age was like 16 and I was, or 15 and I was 14. But yeah, so I listened to them from outside.
I got into metal like definitely from school. Like I used to hang out with metalheads at school, you know, and who are, you know, Owen Galia, yeah, and there was another guy who was also, you know, famous for his name, Mr. Bonsai, you know, and yeah, I like Owen. With Owen, he used to show me like loads of bands. Like he showed me Meshuggah, which I loved till this day, you know. And with Bonsai, yeah, he had showed me Beheaded. That was one of the first metal bands that I've ever heard.
My very, very first memory of metal is at a very young age. I was not more than 8 or 9 years old. And I remember being at the market in Valletta and seeing a copied tape of Iron Maiden. And for some reason, something made me pick up this tape. And my mom did not want me to pick it up. And because she was saying this must be satanic music, this is music that you shouldn't be listening to. But obviously, I picked it up anyway. So I picked up the tape, went with the tape back home, put it in one of those old hi-fi, big hi-fi systems. And the tape didn't really play very well. So my mom was like, you see, that is satanic music. So that's my very, very first recollection of anything metal. Later on, when I was around 10 or 11 years old, I think that's when I went into secondary school, that's when I started hanging out with guys who had older brothers who were metalheads. So that kind of segued me into the metal scene, and you know, seeing the first posters of AC/DC, Iron Maiden, Metallica, Black Sabbath and whatnot, getting a few tapes, and that was the beginning of the beginning.
Okay,
You
so
know?
the first one of the first metal bands you heard was local.
Yeah. It was like one of the first. Let's say if there were 10, you know, Beheaded was one of them. You know, who I was listening. Then, you know, it kept on going to Dying Fetus. You know, later on, even Abysmal Torment. I did like a long time just listening to them.
I used to hear those in St. Julian's. We used to go outside their garage and be like,
exactly. Yeah. That's right. Before Pageville and stuff, you know.
So this garage was below his grandmother's house in Portugal. We set it up so we could practice there. We had barely any neighbors, so we could be as loud as we could. And we used to practice like really long hours. In fact, we would meet, let's say, at 4 p.m. on Saturday and leave the garage door open, and people would be just passing by and stopping, coming in to see. By the end of the night, we'd have a mini gig in our practice session. Besides giving us a bit more confidence playing, like it was cool that we could tell if people were appreciating our music or not. At the time we were trying to come up with a name of what the band would be called. We were us 4 members, and I started drawing some logos to see what they would think. And one of these logos that they liked had the name Mofested. So we said, okay, the band's gonna be called Mofested. After spreading the name, like telling our friends what our band's called, I'm writing some lyrics and I realized that it was meant to be molested, not Mofested, but there was an error in how we drew the logo. But we said, like,
during Carlos' time, it was sort of, I like to call it as the golden ages, even though I didn't live it.
80s and 90s,
Yeah,
they were.
80s and 90s, it was like the golden ages, even though I didn't live it, but from the feedback. It's sort of like it was the major scene, so almost like the major scene, all the young people used to love metal.
I've seen the scene going from being almost mainstream, like being a rocker was considered the norm almost. I come from a time when there was a huge rivalry between rockers and rappers, and there used to be these, that was just, I remember when we started Lynch, I remember people actually coming up to us and calling me a sellout because I'm wearing baggies and oh, new metal, you guys, you rapping music, you're not rockers anymore, but luckily that has changed.
There was a bigger following, but I think it's because maybe music wasn't that spread out, as in there were certain styles of metal, and
there
was
only one place also where you can, except from the outdoor gigs.
It's true. It used to, when we used to play Beheaded and Lynch, in fact, we used to try find places like best in town, places that weren't metal places, and we used to basically see where we were going to turn into a metal basically place to play, but there were a lot more people, I think, back then, and a lot less bands.
I mean, I started off like in the scene in the late 90s, so it was 98 when I started going out and to gigs, and I think it was a bit of a cycle, because at first it was there were few bands. I think when I started going to gigs, you get a gig maybe once every 3 months or even less. Then all of a sudden there was like a boom, even when we still rehearse actually in Marsa, like every garage in that floor was filled with bands.
Different bands. Most of them never made it out of the garage.
Sometimes I'm not sure if it's because we were younger, but it felt like there was more of a community locally, let's put it that way. At the time I could only see the scene locally, and you'd get a lot of people to gigs. There were 4 or 5 places where bands could play. Shows were happening frequently. You'd go to a club and people will be giving out flyers for a gig next weekend. It felt like there was more happening, even if maybe there was less happening than it's actually happening now. But the scene felt alive.
the Maltese scene in the 80s was very, very insular, and at the same time, perhaps very much more tight-knit. And there used to be lots of expectation about gigs. So going to a gig really meant something. You'd be looking forward to it a month before. And people used to congregate there, and that's where we used to gain information about bands, exchange tapes. There was a huge tape trading network, for example.
Today I see it a bit more fragmented, sort of. Not everyone goes to see everyone. I remember the first Forsaken gig had 600 people, you know. You can dream of it today locally. And but I still think it's a very healthy scene. I like the scene how it is today, you know. Everyone works hard, everyone gets to record stuff, play abroad, very hardworking. And that's how we were in the beginning.
You can get, for instance, about three years ago. No, how long has VGen been closed now? For 5?
Something like that.
About 5 or 6 years ago, something like that.
5 or 6.
There were two bands. There were two bands, two different kind of bands playing. When one band played, who came to see the other band were outside. When they changed, the fans changed as well, which was bad. I mean, you're still paying for two bands.
But the actual presence in front of the band swings according to which band is on stage at the time. And obviously the audience that came for a particular band, I mean, it's a common occurrence. Maybe not so much abroad because they don't tend to go outside. They stay in the venue.
But sometimes I come across this phenomenon in Malta where, like, for example, if we're presenting a festival like we do with MDM under the tag of doom metal, you have a lot of people that wouldn't really even be interested to attend the event. Even if we have bands which we're trying to widen now the capture a bit. We've introduced, for example, a number of black thrash bands, but when people sometimes hear this nomenclature, doom metal, they immediately associate it with shit like, and this is a personal opinion, like My Dying Bride and stuff like that, which really bores the hell out of me. So when it's really not the case, you know.
Personally, I think that the scene in Malta is amazing. Personally, I like it. There's always audience, so I think the scene in Malta's great.
Yeah, it's healthy.
It's very healthy.
And comparing to its size, like there are,
Yes.
you know, it's a very small country, but like everyone attends gigs. I mean, you never go to a gig and there will be no people. Everyone's always interested in any kind of music, you know. It's
exactly
here. Like the scene is very vast. You know, there's power metal, there's gothic metal, there's black metal, there's death metal. There's a bit of everything and everything in between.
Yeah.
And something I've noticed is that the Maltese metalheads, they like every genre of the music, not like Nordic countries, you know. They would like black metal only, or like Italy, thrash only. Here, people like everything, so I think the scene is very, very healthy.
When you're an event organizer and you include different styles, I can see it from the organizer's point of view, but unluckily, internationally, the metal scene is very elitist, which is improving, but
it's still there.
It's still there. A musician should be treated as a musician. The same way I play metal and someone plays pop, I will never say, oh, he sucks, you know, because he plays pop. He's a sellout. It's what he likes. It's what he plays. If he does it well, but unluckily we get people even in Malta and the metal scene that will look down on other bands because metal is superior. Technically, maybe. This guy's playing. This girl's playing. They're having fun. They're doing it well. They're doing it right.
By all means.
And they have a crowd of people that are enjoying it, whether it being 5 people or 5,000 people. It's touching someone in some way. So let them be, live and let live. And I think the biggest problem is in the mentality that was ingrained in the Maltese, because the rockers were the troublemakers. And unluckily, it kept going and going.
the genre has become sort of confounded to me, as in I don't look at it as like, I don't look at any genre as kind of like defining. Sort of if it's music and it sounds good, like it's if it's appealing to me, So I don't know if I'd be able to tell you like more recent metal gigs I've been to, but I can tell you like heavy stuff I remember, like I've seen Bila a number of times.
In the other day, I believe in this kind of music, and I'm not going to compromise what I listen. If a person doesn't like traditional heavy metal, it's okay. It's his opinion. I have mine, and I never ask people why you don't like traditional heavy metal.
It's different. It's not like club music, There is hip hop, there is club music, but there is underground hip hop, conscious hip hop, political hip hop, whatever you want to call it.
And do you think that kind of has a similar?
It is similar, yeah. Look at Sepultura, what they talk about. Look at Immortal Technique, what he talks about. So it's voice for the people,
Personally, I think the scene, for as long as I remember it, it goes through different phases. There's phases in which the scene is going through a good phase, with a lot of gigs, with a lot of bands coming, with bands taking initiatives, promoters and whatnot. And then there are phases in which the scene seems to quiet down a bit. Right now, I think this is probably one of the best times for the scene, because we're seeing a lot of local bands taking initiative to actually organize, start networking, going abroad, and sort of not having this feeling of self-entitlement that the government should give me this, or I should get that, or I should get this opportunity and I'm not getting it because I'm from Malta.
I would describe it as a cottage industry, right? It's small, but we try to evolve within the capabilities you have.
But still, we don't have the support from
from the organizations, from the.
We used to walk miles, catch buses, just to go watch a band we have never heard of or never seen before.
At the time, everybody took buses.
And
nobody drove.
Mostly you needed 2 buses everywhere. So, except for Valletta.
Except for me being from Paula, I only had to take 1 bus. So I was lucky.
If the gig was in the south, if the gig was at the Porres.
At the Porres, we always had to walk back because we always lost the last bus.
Metalheads have to be supportive of these local, especially these up-and-coming local bands, because they might not necessarily have the budget to really present something which is that appealing. But at the same time, if we kill off these young up-and-coming bands, we'll be killing off the scene. So it's important that metalheads are supported.
I see our age as inspirational to us, because if by 19 we've kind of come up with something different and are slowly building quite an audience, what else can come like in the time we have left,
My personal opinion of how probably the scene just went down a little, because the same old bands just practically play frequently all over the place, always first to play, headlining and whatnot, and not giving a chance to the younger bands which are fairly new and bring something fresh to the table.
This is why I try to change around the bands from year to year, so that we don't have the same bill every time, and also we allow some space for the newer bands. I always try and put in the new bands at the cost of, unfortunately, having to leave out a band that's been in the scene for a while. Now what happened this year is that when I closed the bill at 14 bands this year to try and minimize the amount of time the festival takes, because I've noticed that obviously at the beginning and the end we have less people. This time I had around 4 bands left out, and these were good bands and I didn't want to leave anyone out, so I came out with this wild idea of having the second event. I took a look at the events taking place during the year, and I've seen that May and June was pretty empty.
the issue we have actually for this year, since it's the most year that has events, there's too much events, you know. You have to look for the dates and you have to fill in what's left because it's too much. But still, you know, it's something positive.
So I said, let's not leave it to June because of exams. And I know some exams start in May, but I said, you study during the weekend, have some fun on a Saturday evening. So I did this small event, which is taking place in early May this year. This will have 7 bands. And I also included a couple of rock bands, 2 of them actually, that I've always told them, you can't play XMA because you're rock and not metal enough. And I always feel like I'm really leaving them out on a very, very small detail. So I said, yeah, no, this time it's open for all and you can come and have a blast. And I actually advertised for bands who wanted to play this event. It was pretty free for everyone. So I got a good response. My Kill 'Em All session band, you know, is playing at this event. It gives me more time to concentrate on the larger event, because when I did play at XMA, at the proper XMA, it was a bit too much strain on me. So I'm playing the smaller event.
We never really thought about it as we're going to do this to change how.
Yeah, it's more kind of we're doing it to enrich our own lives, and you know, the fact that people also like it and come to see us is very rewarding. I mean, it's nice, obviously, that we have some influence as well, because I do think that, yeah, you know, we're quite different from your normal cut of bands as well. But also, I mean,
something interesting is how we get an audience from different scenes as well.
Yes,
like people from the alternative scene come to see us sometimes.
From
people from the metal scene
well.
come.
It really ranges, and you know, we've been very fortunate to meet many people as well. One of the nice things about you know, playing in a local scene is getting to meet most of the people that come and see you. So I remember we played the opening night of the Malta Doom Metal Festival, I think a year or 2 ago, and we got to meet quite a number of people as well.
Today the bands they have a lot of expenses before the gig them for itself. So no, I see like today someone, I think Taliaferro, just posted all their events and it's just amazing. So people are doing their part. All we need is just a good place where there is lighting and good sound.
Yeah, we need funding from places like government, music places, because the people are doing what they can. Everyone's spending so much money just to... The gig we did at, the Halloween gig we did at the warehouse, it was a ridiculous amount how much it cost us to get everything together. It's impossible for us to do that every time for everyone to enjoy it as much as we could enjoy it. Big stage, nice lights, big huge venue. You can't do that. It's impossible. You need funding, and we don't feel like there's anyone who funds any underground scene. Like you said with hip-hop, something really similar is the fan base.
Yeah, exactly.
They're both die-hard fan base, and they both don't get any help because they're underground, I guess, and they're what people don't want to hear.
Because it's controversial, I don't know.
Yeah, it's anti-government, anti-politics, maybe. That's why, I don't know.
I don't know that these people know what the issues the bands have truly are. Because if you appoint someone in the government who is going to get a salary for finding practice spaces for bands, then whoever appointed this guy or whoever proposed this has no idea what the fuck is going on in with the local, not just metal scene. We're talking about now.
Wasn't he supposed to build garages? Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Anyway, I don't think the issue is practice spaces. We've never had that kind of limit where bands practice. It's where bands play. That's the problem.
I mean, there's Noel. I know for sure Noel, and even Mike Bouget as well. They try to push. They try to support the scene as much as possible. And I mean, I appreciate their effort, honestly, because it's not an easy task at all.
The trouble is that some don't even give them a chance. I mean, you might like that sound, you might like their appearance, you might like their music, but some of them, they don't give them a chance. I mean, your band stopped, they just go out.
The good thing about the festivals, the way MDM, at Loathe and Malta, even VOTS and the Dark Winter Meeting, the way they mix the styles, I think it's a healthy mix. Because if you go because of a particular band or two or three, you're going to get the chance to see three bands that you probably either didn't know about or didn't care about, and then you might realize that they give a really good show, and I'm glad I actually got the chance to see them thanks to the other bands and thanks to this festival, whatever. So I think that whoever stays out or walks out during one of the bands is probably missing something for sure.
And I guess if everyone is in a band in such a small country, and all the fans are in a band, and I think it's much easier to start a band today. Equipment is way easier to get. In 96 and 99, if I wanted a certain type of a harness, I have to go abroad with my family on holiday, hope I find it and buy it, because there's no get it for me like it is today. So I think it's much easier to do music today.
You can see a positive about it. Like more people, more bands can bring more people, you know? So there's more fans to the scene, and those fans can hear, for example, us from that new band, for example, you know? I think the more bands, the merrier.
We need new bands and new styles and new original music. We need good shit. It used to lack that in Malta. And now we're getting better. It's getting much better.
It's only
a lot of bands are coming into the scene, and new music, new good music, new amazing music, you know. There are some really good bands in Malta.
Well, I think that the metal scene is quite good in Malta. There are quite a few good musicians, like a lot of good musicians, which are not known enough, I think, and they're not accredited as much as they should be.
The metal scene is one of the more known in Malta. Sorry to talk over you, but
I still think they deserve a little more credit.
At the moment, it's rising once again.
It hit an all-time low. Actually, there was a certain point where it was practically dead. Nobody would go to gigs. Nobody would go out.
I mean, when we were in the name of, we had a couple of requests. Probably the name just struck a note or something with some people, and they're like, would you like to play in this event hosted in this village? The minute you tell them, okay, but you know, we're a metal band. No. It's like, no, metal tends to be marginalized. On the other hand, it's a good thing because it keeps it raw, but
you have to understand that
they have to help.
You have to understand that it is kind of an acquired taste, and if you really, if everyone liked metal, it would be boring. Let's be fair.
Definitely.
But then again, there is still that small percentage of resentment towards it, which does keep certain projects, certain events, certain bands slightly more backwards. Yes.
Although, I must say, on a positive note, Beerfest this year was very much into alternative scene. Huh? It wasn't. No, there used to be one rock night.
By all means.
No, but there was used to be only one heavy metal night, and I think this year was two.
For the first time.
It's for the first time. So
things are looking up.
Something's happening.
Something's happening.
Well, I mean, sometimes the scene is like unpredictable, but recently, you know, if you do a local gigs, it's been a while now since we did any really just local gigs, like 2 bands or 3. It's like
because we played festivals.
Yeah, we're playing like festivals because last few small gigs, you got a problem because nobody likes to pay up that much, and gigs are really cheap. I mean, like to pay 12 euros for 3 bands or 4. Even sometimes I think 7 and 8. But it's still a little steep for some people in Malta. I can't understand why for the metal scene. And sometimes, you know, like you have a packed house and like and then on the other hand, sometimes
it's like empty, and you can't really put a reason for it. There were some really good gigs, small festivals. And some people blamed because, I don't know, like a lot of people are going abroad and watching their favorite band, and like now they don't care about the local stuff. I don't know if it's true or not.
We've got a problem here. I mean, you have to get out. I mean, it's
a problem.
There's
It's
always,
not, I think.
yeah, of course, but there is a problem. I mean, as much as there isn't, because you're close, you can rehearse, it's easy, blah blah blah. But then you have the problem where you don't have enough audience, you don't have enough places.
And
it's small.
diversity of
It's very small. It's like a piece of a city. No band is just gonna play in just a piece of a city. You know what I mean? You have to go out.
It's different because you go abroad, you see other things you don't see here, but the vibe is still the same. You know, you get to see metalheads, you get to see foreign bands. You get to meet the bands, you know, it's not just local bands, as always, you know, like it used to be.
I think the thing that strikes you most when we sort of started playing abroad the first time in '98. It was '98, and you know, it was like Czech Republic and Germany. And I remember what struck me most, at least, was like there was a sort of structure around the whole thing. If you're going to play in a venue, sort of, there's the promoter, there are people selling stuff, things that we didn't used to see here.
Our worst gigs were abroad, mind you.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of gigs where we just played in front of the other bands.
The bar stuff.
The other bands in the bars.
Because you tour like for a week or two, and you play every day. You play Wednesdays, you play Thursdays, you play Mondays. In pubs and places, and
the arse end of nowhere.
Yeah,
UK, you know.
They like Kurt said, you know, sometimes they were very poor, and you know, we still gave a show, we still did our work.
If you're playing in Germany, and most of it will be an urban area, it also affects the mood of the people. But other than that, even the economy of the country sometimes affects these things when it comes, for example, merchandise and so on and so forth.
Yeah, like some countries, what we notice is that some countries are more sort of hungry for metal. Like, do you know how it was in the old days? Like, people used to actually buy the CD, not, you know, go and, you know, just download it. It was a bit harder to come by, and somehow we noticed that this is that like atmosphere of like the old days is still present in some countries, like for example Ukraine. Like they appreciate every band.
Yeah, they appreciate the music. They're really into it. But most probably in East European countries, you won't sell as much as you would sell in the western side of Europe. You know, so even us, when we tour, before we go on tour, we take care of these logistics. Like, it's no point taking 300 CDs, you know, to countries like Ukraine, you know, but we would take that amount if we go to Germany.
Something we saw was the reaction of fans at the gig. Whereas in Malta, it's like, yeah, I've come to this gig and let's see what's happening. But, you know, it's a little bit more laid back. The people there are like, yeah, you know, we're at this metal gig, you know, let's have fun. So, and I hear this time to time from people, even who go to play abroad. They just say it's a totally different experience. It's like Malta. We get used to the band, we get used to the people, and we take each other for granted. It's not something completely negative. It's something in our Maltese attitude. But yeah, it's a good thing that many local bands are playing abroad, even at prestigious festivals, and they always come back overwhelmed with their experience. So it's really worth it to have a band, play a couple of shows in Malta, but especially if you can make it once or twice a year abroad, you're doing the utmost for your band.
And even if you see it the other way around, as we said before, to bring a big band from abroad, they have to bring their equipment across the Mediterranean. So what we are doing if we go abroad, we are doing the same thing. We need help from here as well, you know. To book
flight tickets.
Yeah.
Hey, pay our tickets.
Or at least
pay the flights for us or something like that.
At least they need to understand that even though to them it's Satan, they need to understand that there is a market and they can make money and they can do well from it because there is a market. They just need to at least understand that. Or at least, like he said, pay and a ticket, sponsor us with tickets, give us cheaper flight tickets if you're going abroad.
Something like that.
To perform.
Malta, sponsor us.
Like they would do with sports. Like
Please.
just give us a small cut from the tickets so we can all go up and do a good tour and maybe come back with something back in our pockets. It's a gamble every time.
For me, it means that Maltese bands need to up their game.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
That's a certainty.
So if you have all these gig goers or whatever you want to call them that are now going abroad, going to festivals like Wacken, Hellfest, watching their favorite bands, so they're getting used to professional bands, like great shows, great sound, great everything, you know, so it is kind of a competition now. We're even competing not just between us locally, but we kind of have to compete as well with foreign bands.
The thing is, because there's a lot of competition when it comes to bands, which is a really healthy competition, but nowadays...
Competition locally?
Globally, international. Now with this internet era, you know, everything is global, you know. So the thing is, like, for example, giving an example with ourselves, we do work hard a lot to get tours, to get booked, you know. It's like running a company after all, you know. You need to promote yourself, you need to promote your merchandise and try to get attention from the big people, you know, to get you booked, to get you signed, you know, get opportunities, magazines, press. And the more you will end up having of these things, you know, it always a step further.
But for the Maltese bands to promote themselves online, there's a lot of competition. Like there's a huge amount of bands nowadays that you can listen to, even when you use Spotify or whatever. Like all the time, new bands are coming up and whatever. So it's nowadays it's more up to you playing live and promoting yourself like that. So that's the biggest challenge, is finding that a tour or something like that, which can be kind of funded or anything, because it is expensive. But even with just the flights, it's really an extra expense for the Maltese scene.
One drawback that I see today is that many bands or many musicians are getting a bit lazier because they have the technology. At our days, just to rehearse one song, they would even stay late till about 1-3, even whole night in the garage just to rehearse for one gig or even one song just to record it. And it was very expensive at that time. Compared to today, it was very, very expensive to record just one song. But today, many bands have their recording technology in their garages. And I think in a way they're getting a bit lazier. They put songs, they do a video, put it on YouTube, and that's it. After 6 months you listen to them again, but you never see them live, you never see them at others' gigs, which is one thing. Another problem.
In fact, that's another difference that I didn't mention actually, from the 80s to now. In the 80s, I remember going to practically, if not all the gigs, almost all the gigs, regardless of whether they were metal bands or alternative bands or whatever.
You used to have metal and alternative in the same gig.
And the crowds were mixed, and the whole community basically went there. All right, maybe there weren't as many activities or as many distractions at the time, but now you tend to go, if you go to an alternative gig, you won't see many metalheads, and vice versa. You'll see a handful maybe, but not too many at each other's gigs. So it's kind of fragmented a bit, because once you get all the genres subdivided, you know, even within metal itself, sometimes if you have a doom metal event, the death metal fans may not all go. Some of them will, but I mean, there's that fragmentation. Before we didn't have that. Before it was, it's a live gig, let's go.
In the metal scene especially, you don't find a lot of producers that never played in a band. They just studied engineering and that's it. Most of them either started playing and then they saw that there's more money in the producing part than from the band, and they ended up then becoming just producers. In my case, I don't want to do that. I want to play with the bands and whatever. I want to play live. It's kind of the buzz of everything, you know, see the response of the people. Even when we go abroad, it's really cool.
So you love the best of both worlds?
Yes, definitely.
And I think today with today with modern technology and internet and stuff, if you get into, let's say, doom metal, so you have enough material just to listen to doom metal, and you don't veer into the other genres. At our days, we listened to a couple of bands.
Then there was only one kind of metal. It was heavy metal.
It was heavy metal.
That was it. Now it's like new metal, doom metal, thrash metal, speed metal.
The fact that you're at home, you can just go online and see whatever band you want. You listen to any music you want. Before, it wasn't the same for myself. Unless I'm waiting for Tuesday night to listen to Grinta, a radio station at the time, that would play a song maybe I never heard and I want to listen to the band, so I try look it up one way. We didn't have internet that made the music so easily accessible, so going out to meet friends, talk about music, find out different things, that I think changed a lot. The fact that now the young generation wouldn't do the same.
Even like bands, the Maltese bands debuting their first songs, they played them in bars and radios. It was different. Not like now you see it on Facebook.
There was a hype to it, you know. Even
Exactly.
I think this is the thing when we were talking about as well social media, the internet, it sort of made things look more easy, but at the same time it made them worse because people think and take things for granted. I think at this
made
point.
them lazier.
Social media made it easier to get abroad. It made it easier to get your music heard elsewhere.
Around the globe, mostly.
It took away something locally, I think.
I think metal has a sort of taboo, you know. This is we've been there for many years, but I think those 500 or 600 people, which are basically Maltese metalheads, we are still being supported by these people. However, if it weren't for those 2 or 3 organizers, the metal scene in Malta would be on its knees again for the second time, because I believe in the late 90s, the beginning of the new century, out of the 2000s, we had some problems.
Of course, there's the cultural thing. Like, for example, if you go to work, you're gonna hear like talk about the festa, talk about the football, talk about the maybe the food, the fireworks. Those are what your colleagues are going to talk about. You sort of expect it. Everyone has this. Once you sort of your interest is metal music and going abroad and playing like tours and concerts, and you start off getting off this grid and you sort of you don't actually fit in that. So there is that sort of that one feels that he doesn't fit in the matrix of it all.
But I think that's what metal is in a way.
Yeah, that's what is it.
It's
But
kind of give a place for people who feel they don't fit. I mean,
most probably yes.
I mean, I had started trying to fuse my interest in academia and sociology and rock and metal music very earlier on in my academic trajectory. And for my PhD, I really wanted to exorcise my own demons. So I had other opportunities, including a scholarship to work on something different abroad, not in Malta. But I stuck to my guns, I resisted the temptation, and basically what I did was use the local heavy metal subculture as a case study in subcultural theory. And it took me about eight years to do. The first 4 years was mostly immersion in the theory, in the literature, because there's a sea of literature in subcultural studies. But the challenge was really to try to look at the mundanity of the heavy metal world. Sometimes when we reflect on heavy metal, we often have this imagery of people, either dabbling in coarse paint, sacrificing virgins on an altar. But what I really wanted to look at was move away from the iconography and the symbolism and look at the mundanity of the real-life world of metalheads in Malta.
It's exactly what we were saying, because it's controversial, it's...
Yeah, the politics.
The mentality here in Malta is way different than how it is abroad. Here in Malta, maybe the church controls a lot. People are like the church, You can't expect metal. I wish it was different, but here in Malta, it's different. The metal is different. It's like old-fashioned, the mentality still.
I don't think we have any new age politicians who will stand up for arts the way they do for metal abroad and stuff like that. It's like most people in government, any side of government, don't want to be associated with anything to do with club murder. It's okay to watch a horror film, but if the band is called Club Murder and we won't sponsor them, we won't help them, we won't fund them because they're evil or a stupid thing they'll come up with. But
when we recorded our first album, it was like 96. It was 96, and we sort of got signed with this Swedish label, and we received our first batch of CDs. And the contact address on the CD was the other guitarist's address. And this guy, I used to be quite close with him, David Bugeja, I say hello. And he told me, listen, I got this letter, we need to go and face a censorship board because of our first album. I said, okay, let's go and do this, It was like 5 kids, 20-year-olds, really happy that we sort of made something out of our passion and got signed with a Swedish label, and now this is sort of the way Malta is like looking at us. We knew, but when it happens to you, you then realize even more. And we said, okay, let's go there. It was like a priest and old people, I think it was like 8 people or 9. It was me and him. Sort of, what should we say? It's the cover had a moon on it, a sort of a shadow.
I think there was an inverted cross, a small inverted cross.
Yeah, I think the perpetual T in perpetual was, I think, an inverted T.
You still use that inverted cross?
Yes.
Very happy.
And actually they were like, let's see what these guys have to say. And so they because the lyrics are really atheistic and okay, but sort of it's art at the end of the day, it's very subjective. And we sort of got our CDs, but it gives you a picture of what being a death metal band in Malta in the mid-90s was like.
I think, just to add on what Omar is saying, I think metal as the antagonist, as the rebellious kind of music, it rebels against what's current. So if you look back in the 90s, I remember back in the 90s, outside of that metal, outside of the metal world, I remember a lot of TV shows, documentaries about satanic cults. Satanic cults were the thing, like the shocking thing. Nowadays, satanic cult is not shocking to anyone. So metal is, nowadays, extreme forms of metal are, by the general public, more widely accepted in the grand scheme of things. And again, even though Malta still, even though in Malta there's still a religious presence by the church, it's a different situation. So I think metal has it easier now than it used to back in the day.
And Malta metal is still Satan. You know what I mean?
That's exactly my point. You know,
Yes, all metal in Malta is
because it's metal. It's
for my mom. It's
Satan.
satanic.
You're evil. You know.
For people who have nothing to do with it, I don't blame them because they see you do this and it's the horns and so maybe it's the reason why, I don't know, but it's with old-fashioned to religious.
But I think before it was even more sort of. It wasn't like, okay, you don't belong. Before, even now a bit, you know, you don't belong, so, you know, get away. I don't want to be with you, sort of. There was this antagonistic sort of relationship. Now it's no one really cares that much anymore.
That's an issue, that there are bands like us, like Beheaded, like Forsaken, like Weeping Silence, that are playing shows abroad, getting a lot of exposure abroad. We kind of are making our mark in various countries and having a lot of fans, and it seems like over here with a certain group of people it's unnoticed because it's not a commercial style, or we don't get maybe support on TV, you won't get support or help by the government, radios, there aren't radio shows that would push such.
There are radio shows, but they never really.
They're not even helped themselves.
Yeah.
One of the things that is always brought up time after time is if the government should help. I think, in my opinion, I think any help from the government is good, but not to the bands. Any help from the outside has to be to the scene, and not just pinpoint a couple of bands and help them. I mean, there are about 5 or 7 festivals altogether, because Shell Shock happens every 2 years. I think all of them should be helped the same, from the government, from the cultural minister, from everyone. Even of course, this doesn't go into just metal. All the same, completely. But I can't see, and I don't agree if a band goes for financing something from the government and they get it, and another band don't.
Yeah, but maybe I don't know who's responsible or supposed to like help out. Like when I've heard, like when you play football with the national team or you go abroad, you're even entitled to leave. And I mean, how come the music culture, the government never helps? I mean, we had to pay overweight sometimes. Not that we had any help financially, or at least, you know, like
it feels like
that's nothing. There's nothing for the music scene, whatever type of music that is.
Like the music culture here.
But if it's sports, I mean, like I remember some guy, like he was carrying skis. That's okay. It's free on the airplane, and we had to pay. I don't know how much for overweight, and you like say, how come? I mean, it's music. We're taking our Maltese music to another country. Why can't we, like, you know, just help us a little out, you know?
In general, the government really never, honestly, in my opinion, never approached us directly. Like, listen, you're putting Malta's name on the map, you know. In the metal scene abroad.
God forbid that the state starts messing around with these sort of events. It would continue, I think, to dilute and filter down the meaning of heavy metal music. And for us, it's important that we retain a sense of integrity and a sense of, I would argue, a sense of ownership and distance from the powers that be they political, be they entrepreneurial and commercial, because once you start getting too close to the echelons of normative society, the risk of being co-opted and losing your authenticity increases.
I've done it, I've played in the worst places, and yes, maybe some people after me can as well, but if there is a way to help them in good rehearsal spaces.
Yeah.
Like,
let's not like forget that the bands have been getting by for these 20 years with rehearsal spaces still. You know, they didn't need any help, kind of thing. But yes, it would be great if the band's musicians
it's a bit safer.
would actually, you know, not be treated like, you know, they are in the gutter of Marsa, you know.
By taking
they get funding because
they're not associated with Satan.
Exactly. No, there's something that they're proud of because they like this music, so they can say, "Oh, we're proud of this." As soon as something is heavy, so like he said, it's even, then we're not proud of it.
We had more support from labels in Canada and America, helping us out to get our music out to the public than someone local giving us support as it should be, in my opinion.
All the bands, all the artists help themselves because they have no other choice.
Exactly.
Not just metal. The difference is, perhaps in metal, because I think Noel will agree with me here, that the metal scene is more of a brotherhood, the way I see it. And so when you go to a metal event, the feeling there is always different to when you go to an indie event. And I'm talking locally at the moment, so obviously, and to any other event. I mean, that's what I sense it that way anyway. When I go, I'm not professed metalhead. I just like metal. I have obviously my preferences as well, but I like to attend metal gigs because, you know, like apart from supporting the scene, there are usually bands that I enjoy and music that I like listening to as well, watching performances, etc. But and I do that with alternative bands as well. But the feeling when you walk into a metal gig is totally different. It's like, I don't know. It is a brotherhood.
It's a brotherhood. I mean, everybody knows everyone else.
So that helps. That helps it.
Because in Malta, there's very little culture from the, let's call them the entertainment owners of paying the entertainers yourself. They really don't do that. Or else getting entertainers, even people who don't really play metal but are composers, to play their own material. In Malta we do a lot of the cover band shit, and God, it's awful. Obviously, it's awful for anyone who doesn't like cover bands and likes original compositions. But it's even worse for people who do compose whatever style of music it is, because there's no avenue for it. And we've seen the number of feasible venues dwindle and dwindle and dwindle, and there's still no clarity in the law with regard to noise and zoning. So it's fine if clubs in Partridgeville go until the early hours of the morning, but then if you are gigging in Partridgeville and the gig goes on for a minute past 1 o'clock in the morning, the police come and shut you down. This is things we've had. We played a release gig on a ship. It's on the ground, but on a ship in an area that is not residential at all, and we had to be super careful that we don't go over 1 o'clock in the morning. And still, if the police had decided to come, if there was a single noise complaint, they have the right to shut you down. And this is not just a metal complaint.
Okay, so it's not a bias. You don't think it's
this
a
is
bias?
not. I mean, if you refer to, let's say, Berkoni, for example, who are absolutely not a metal band, they've had many of their gigs shut down this way. I can count at least 2 of them, and one of them was in a field in the middle of nowhere. So some people will say it's arguments about personal vendetta and all of that, but the fact that this ambiguity remains in the law, and the fact that there's so few avenues, so few venues that we can use, that makes it harder to put on a good show.
It's a vicious circle. You have the scene that cannot increase much in numbers. You have venues that will choose different types of scenes depending on what type of amounts of people are coming, and a limited amount of venues that will take this type of event.
One thing I would change is the age that how
The
can I
audience.
explain?
The audience, yeah.
Yes, because you have to be 18 to go to
listen to music, basically.
To listen to music, actually. That I don't like it.
I think it has to be considered on a scale though, because
I think as a ratio,
as a
ratio is quite healthy. As how many people there are that like metal.
Financially, it isn't.
Financially, it is a bit-
Financially abroad, I think a lot of promoters get a lot of help from the government.
Yes.
Where they fund gigs, they pay us to go there.
You basically don't have. I'm not saying it's begging, but yeah, here in Malta sometimes it feels like you have to beg on your knees to actually get some sponsors, because it's
a good deal is harder to get locally than abroad.
But that's never stopped any band that wanted to work from working.
Of course not.
What does stop you is if you don't have a stage and lights and sound to then play what it is you've been working either in your mom's bedroom or in your dingy little garage or in your living room with your headphones on, whatever. I mean, you can write just using your laptop and a pair of good headphones if you want, but if you then don't have anywhere where you can show this to 400 people, what's the freaking point of doing it? That is in my opinion, I may be wrong, but in my view, that is the brunt of the problem here. And it's a shame because there's money to be made in entertainment, there's money to be made at the bar. So, I mean, I don't know, is it just because the money is maybe a little bit harder to get, because it's different to get? But there is commercial interest at the heart of entertainment, it's always been that way, so someone figure it out, make a buck.
The obstacles that I find to find a venue, and I'm laughing, and don't edit that out, is because I have faced a number of different types of obstacles where the venue is concerned. So let's talk about recently, straight away. Recently, it has not been a big problem, but I had to really be careful about the venue I'm organizing in, because the local authorities have been very, very strict and adamant about what type of permit the place has. And you have to provide a lot of things and this and that. And this is because they are trying to improve safety at the events. And hats off to them, because I prefer to have an event where people feel safe instead of having an event anywhere without anything in place. So, yeah, unfortunately, sometimes this means that you have to run after people to get stuff, and it becomes, in a nutshell, it becomes a little bit of a hassle.
I'm not saying that I want, audience younger than 70 to drink alcohol, but there are solutions to the problem, how you can, make sure, like, for example, underage people, they will have separate tags, and the bar, the staff by the bar won't give them drinks. There are a lot of solutions you can do.
I think what Plancha and Oliver are trying to say is that younger people should be encouraged to listen to metal music and actually go to gigs, because right
and
now...
let them in. And let them in. Because at my time I was 12 and I used to go to gigs.
Exactly.
And they used to let me in.
Even in my time.
And when we play abroad,
and the signals
in festivals, there will be
even
people
babies,
with
yes.
babies.
That's really cool.
It's true.
So
abroad it happens. Like
they
in Germany, we saw.
grown up in metal. Here we're killing the young ones, and we need the young people.
That's true.
Yes, this belongs to my life, sort of. Yeah. So, and I belong to the scene, sort of. So to speak.
When there is a show lately, it's packed. It's how it should be. It's in that aspect, it's moving forward. In that area, it is moving forward.
I think it's metal in general, even abroad. Even when people fall up, how everyone stops, picks you up again. I think it's this aggressive what family thing, like
an aggressive family.
But even though the scene is not very large, but I think it's like a family. So everybody is sort of close. It's like a brotherhood. Yeah, it's like a brotherhood, exactly. I think it's very strong. I think it's very strong.
I'm really happy that I've taken from the metal scene, so to say. It's how the band itself functions. Like every band, they're a family. Maybe not all of them, but you know what I mean. Like they have a baby. They're working for the band. Everyone is like really focused.
It's like having a kid.
Yeah. And with the wrench, we have that thing, like that. I think it came all the way from all those years, of rehearsing.
I'd like to see more bands
creating music for the sake of creating what they want to create rather than defining themselves by a genre and then creating music.
Yeah, that's true. The erosion of the like one line view of genres in a way. I think, you know, that definitely is something that some Maltese bands maybe take a bit too seriously. It's like, you know, in the metal scene, I guess, I noticed that there's a number of bands that like say, oh, we're a doom metal band, so we only do doom metal, nothing else. So, I mean, for fans of that music, that's great, but also for people like us, or maybe people who are similar age, you know, since we're saying that, we might be looking for something a bit more versatile, you know, especially because of stuff like, you know, the internet as well, where you can discover a myriad of these sort of experimental metal bands. It would be nice just to have that level as well of like, you know, if this, you really like this heavy band that's from Australia, that's really, it's sort of metal, but it's also bending the normal definition of metal.
The album for this, we called it Never to Dawn, and there's a reason behind that, because it was like, it was actually a title for the scene in general and life here. So if you, I mean, is there like hope in this whole thing here?
Yeah, many times.
And we sort of got this idea and decided, yeah, this is the title that we should name the album.
Many times in Malta, being in Malta, you kind of come to the self-realization that you're going around in circles. And if he's like, you're going around in circles, you're doing the same thing, but things aren't changing, but you're still hoping that there will be change. And that's a very strong characteristic of us Maltese, I think. And that is actually what inspired Never to Dawn. It's like, there will never be light.
And even the artwork, if you sort of had to look at it, you see this piece of land surrounded by water with these tentacles coming out of the water. And there's also like these Neolithic temples on the base of it. It's like a subtle thing about
the water element obviously is something very close to us because we're an island surrounded by water, and at the same time, as the person who wrote the lyrics, I was kind of looking at water as the source of all life, but at the same time it's the biggest, the most destructive force that man can face.
We can't control how the metal scene grows and evolves. At this point, right now as we speak in February 2017, it seems that there are less metal bands, but that's also a general trend in music popularity. Yes. There's a lot more post this and post that bands, which is all very well and good.
Bands come and go because of trends as well.
Bands come and go, and venues come and go, but it's much more important that there's always a healthy place or two that can host gigs of all kinds, so that there's a healthy ecosystem going on, and people get to listen to material and they get to have feedback from the crowd and from friends and whatnot, and bands will come and go. They always have. There's new kids who are always buying instruments, that's why music shops exist, and there's old bands like us that are getting on, but we're still going at it strong, so we will be here in some form or another. What we cannot guarantee is that we will have a place to show our stuff. It's going to be a fairly boring world if all we can do is record an album and give it to you on Facebook. Yeah. Because, you know, I think we're best experienced when there's another 400 people jumping around to the tunes, and that's not just us, it's pretty much all bands that write music, the best experience live.
I think metal is the best style of music to play because it's the most energetic, it's the most fun to watch. As in, it's ridiculous how many people like would see us at the beer fest who wouldn't dare listen to our album in the car, but they'll come every year and they'll enjoy it
because of the show.
It's fun. It's energetic, it's not boring, and it's underground, so like other underground music, you haven't heard it a million fucking times all over the radio, so I think it's original, energetic, fun, it's aggression, it's a bit of blowing out steam. No, I definitely think it's the best.
No, seriously, I mean, it's part of my life. I could never imagine myself without metal. Never. You?
I think it started like sort of out of curiosity, as I said, but nowadays I see it like an ingredient I need, without which I cannot sort of go on. It's like an avenue for my creativity. the experiences you make abroad and playing on festivals, like writing music and trying to outdo yourself with each consecutive album and pushing forward. What the music has given me, I think nothing else has been able to give me, till now at least.
I think it's rebel music. It makes me want to kick shit.
It's my life. It's been there. I've been through a lot, you know, and it's been there through the most beautiful periods of my life, even through the worst.
It is everything, because there is so much emotions and so much different styles of music that it keeps you. Sometimes it gives you that energy to keep.
It's motivational.
Yeah, it's motivational.
No, it's actually life. I sleep with metal, I wake with metal, I go to work with listening to metal, I listen to metal at work.
And sometimes listen to something else in between.
And sometimes between listening to something else.
For me, metal, to use a Latin term, is the primus inter pares. It's the first among equals. So there's heavy metal and then there's everything else. I mean, it's been a constant in my life ever since I was an early teen. People have come and gone, people move on, but heavy metal, you know, it stays there, it remains there for you as an important point of reference that is often also crucial for you, in my experience, because of the emotional concretization you feel with the music. It's also a crucial point of reference in those most difficult and bleak and black of times. So, I mean, the power of heavy metal is not to be underestimated.
Even my parents acknowledge this today. I remember I used to have, when I was younger, when I was in my teens, they couldn't understand this music, so I had lots and lots of trouble at home. But as years started to pass and things got serious with Forsaken, they started to understand. I remember my father used to come to our gigs and help us with the entrance, with the people, so.
I'd say for me, I always looked at metal and extreme music, as the name explains, it's extreme. And personally, it does give me that outlet to push myself, even creatively, but also as an individual, to think outside the box, to push the envelope and sort of reach that extreme, go that extra length when it comes to different aspects in life, and that is why metal. I don't really like the term metal anymore. I prefer calling it extreme music, because that's how I see it. I see it as extreme music, as an extreme form of art, and somehow, in a very strange way, I feel very comfortable in that extreme place, in that dark place. Many times, or on certain times, I need to go there to feel at home, and that is what extreme music has given me.
Heavy metal has given me so much accomplishments. Okay, I'm not Ozzy Osbourne, I'm not Ronnie James Dio, but I'm very proud of what I have achieved with Forsaken, with Reflection. Even I've sung in some projects there. And yes, it's my life. It's an integral part of my life. It's not important as much as my family and as the people I love, but it's very, very important. Forsaken, especially, it's something which I hold very dear to my heart.